my name is Yosefa Huber. I'm a US CPA working with Americans living in Israel, and I'm here with Baruch Swinkin, the CEO of Route 38 Professional Services. Baruch specializes in working in basically what we would call payroll services, assisting in connecting, I would say, people who need work done with people who want to be doing work, and really smoothing over the payment system. So specifically for people living in Israel it is easiest for somebody living in Israel to be employed by an Israeli employer. So the Israeli employer handles all these things that the government requires. But in many cases, they want to be working with a client or a company in the US. So we're going to be talking a little bit now about the company side. What would a US or any foreign company, what kinds of things do they have to go through to be working with somebody in Israel?
Thank you. Sure. Israel's a startup nation. Israel's, is their economy is flourishing, thank God, especially in the high-tech sector. And everyone, right now, Israel has a name globally as being a leader in a lot of these different areas and is producing new technologies every single day in every single industry. And the resources and assets that are available here in Israel really are incredible, and it's burgeoning, and people are just asking to find resources and help here. But many companies abroad, if they're hiring and they've identified one or two resources here in Israel, or they're looking to break into the Israeli market, will be excited to do so, but A, don't know much about Israeli tax and accounting requirements and what that's going to mean for them, and B, oftentimes are not yet ready to create any type of nexus over here, to create any type of footprint here in Israel, because that could cause some really major tax headaches down the line. So how would a company go about tapping into an Israeli resource? Let's say you're hiring someone who's really a full Israeli, or you're hiring someone who is fluent English speaker, was recently moved from abroad from an Anglo country.
Or maybe somebody who it could also be somebody who was an employee of your company for many years.
Sure. You have an employee who's just told you recently that, hey, I'm making Aliyah, I want to move to Israel. I love my job. I did this myself 14 years ago. I was working with a small biotech company in New Jersey, and I decided with my wife that, and kids at the time, my kids didn't really decide, nor do they know what the guys listen to. But we decided that we were going to make Aliyah, and we're going to move here to Israel no matter what. And I, told that to my boss, and I told them and my manager, and said, hey, sorry, we're leaving. And the day later, after going through this with them, I told them, by the way, I still think I could do my job for you. And this was something that was 14 years ago. It was something that was not too common at the time. Thank God I was in a position where was able to work, and I had that job for 10 years here. So it's something that's common now, especially with what's gone on the last year and a half in the world. Remote working is something that is extremely common and accepted. And why do you have to work from Teaneck, from the 5 towns, from Miami, from LA, Chicago, London, Berlin, Paris, anywhere in the world, when you can sit and do the same thing from Jerusalem? I think
this past year has really proven that people can mostly productively work remotely, especially, once they get set up to do that. Obviously, when we had all of our children and there was no daycare and no school going on, those were other challenges. But now that all of those things are getting back to normal, people have still proven that they can work very effectively remotely. I hired a remote worker within the past year. She's an employee of my company, full regular employee. She just doesn't show up in the office. She has her computer in her own home, and it works very well. So let's say that you had an employee proper, someone you had been giving a W-2 to every single year, and they want to move abroad. They've been doing work remotely anyway, and they want to move abroad. So you have some issues here, potentially. Besides the employee's side, where the employee has a lot more responsibility to report to the Israeli government, potentially you could have a nexus for the company now in Israel. You could open yourselves up to employment issues in Israel. So to get out of that, what can you suggest?
Sure. As you said, the easiest solution, easiest, not best, easiest solution is to, if the employee is W-2, if you're in the US and you have an employee who's W-2 for you when they move, the simplest solution and the best for the employee actually would be to open up a payroll tax file just for payroll taxes here in Israel called the Tik Nikuin, which again is pretty simple and straightforward. And then you just continue to report. You can, you'll hire an accountant here in Israel, and they'll help you for all reporting requirements here in Israel. Your employee will be fully taken care of and extremely happy. And you can continue. However, 99.9% of the companies in the world will not do this, for the very simple reason that, as you mentioned, you will be creating some type of nexus here. You're opening up an actual tax file here in Israel, which gives, and this is not just for Israel, this is any country in the world. Companies do not want to open tax files in foreign countries, period. It opens you up to way too many risks and liabilities and possibilities, and it's something you want to avoid at all costs, unless you are ready. Sure, unless you're ready to take the plunge and really open up an office in that foreign country and ready to establish a business there. It's something you want to avoid until you absolutely have to take that plunge. So what are my other options then? If I don't open up a tax file, how do I
one of the options would be you just turn that employee into a contractor, which is not nice in my opinion. I mean, you're
Sure.
now dumping onto them 100% of their FICA taxes. So instead of you handling half of their Social Security and Medicare, you're dumping that all on them. You're no longer withholding. You're dealing with somebody who is used to being an employee and now is going to be responsible for handling their own tax quarterly payments and keeping track of their expenses and a lot of reporting to Israel that they it's a lot to deal with when someone's just moved to Israel. So one thing that I recommend. You can say,
sorry.
No, please.
I was going to say it's important to note that while said business owner can say, hey, that's not my responsibility. My employee, up and left to Israel, or hey, I'm just hiring this person in Israel, and that's their problem, not my problem. To an extent, you're right that you're not wrong about that, but it's really important to understand what your employee / contractor, however you're going to relate to this person's, what their perspective is. You want to make sure that they're happy. Obviously, you want to keep them for a reason because they're a productive asset for your company and a significant asset for your company, and you want to make sure that they continue to be productive. And if they are going to, endure challenges and hardships because of the fact that you're going to be treating them in this fashion, there's going to be consequences to that for your business. You want to make sure there's as efficient a transition as possible. So while it's not your responsibility to take care of those taxes in Israel, it's in your best interest to have a very broad understanding of what it means when you turn the person into a contractor and what that is ultimately might mean for your business. Sorry, I cut you off over there.
Exactly. I think it's very important to have happy contractors / employees, workers. You don't, if you're happy with their work, you don't want them to be looking for something that's better, and they might not be telling you about all the burdens that they're dealing with, having to deal with their Israeli taxes. So it's great if you can take care of that. So one of the things that I often recommend, and I speak with a lot of people who are considering moving to Israel, about to move to Israel, or have recently moved to Israel. That's kind of my bread and butter. I do a lot of consulting in that area. And one of the things that I recommend is that they go speak with Baruch, because Baruch can help them many, many times. So what might the employer or payer expect speaking with you?
Sure. Well, first of all, you should understand what you are going to be gaining by engaging with us. By speaking with me, hope I can give you, proper advice and put you in the right direction. But by engaging with us, you're going to have the ability basically to quote unquote hire this employee, hire this resource in Israel without creating that nexus, without creating that footprint that we discussed previously. You're going to be quite far removed from any legal connection to this employee. And therefore, from a tax perspective, really shielding yourself from a significant amount of risk. How do you go about doing so? So in our situation, particularly, There may be many other services around that do things differently. I can just, vouch for what we do. We have a U.S. company called Route 38 LLC that engages and interfaces with all of our U.S. end user clients, all of our North American end user clients, allowing them to continue to have or to create a 1099 relationship with my company in the U.S. We have a Bank of America account, so payments are straightforward. Sign an agreement with you. It'll be a pretty straightforward MSA, Master Services Agreement, and a task order attached, which will specifically discuss and enumerate all the things that the job title, responsibilities, and the remuneration that has been negotiated previously, so everyone's clear on what's going to be paid. Once that's set up, we'll invoice you monthly for the resource here in Israel, and you'll pay us, and we'll take care of the rest. You don't have to worry about a thing after that. Again, as 99, you are not going to be paying any type of employers' payroll taxes or social security taxes or things of that nature. Any benefits really aren't going to be relevant anymore to this resource. So you could potentially have a significant amount of savings. It's important to note that there are obviously Israeli employer costs as well. Those can run anywhere between 22 to 25% of gross income. And if you want to make your employee full, really, and ensure that they're getting full value for what you're hiring them for, you may want to consider throwing in those employer costs as well to ensure that they're getting the full value of what they need. Obviously, you may be getting a resource if you hire someone in Israel versus hiring someone in the U.S. that is slightly cheaper. Not significantly cheaper than what you're paying in the U.S., but you may have some savings there by hiring someone in the Israeli cost of living, while very high. Israeli standard payments are a little bit, standard salaries are a little bit lower than what they are in the U.S., maybe even significantly lower, but for the resources you're looking for, maybe just slightly lower. So you should have some overall savings. Again, working remotely has been proven to work now really well. Obviously, there's limitations to that. But the skies are opening back up and travel can happen again. And you just have the ability to tap into a wealth of resources here without giving up anything. And that can only really be a gain for your company. And
may I ask, is Route 38 LLC, is it taxed as a S Corp or C Corp in the U.S.? It
is taxed as a C Corp in the U.S. It's wholly owned by me, by my partner.
The reason I ask is because that also means that the person who's paying also does not have a responsibility to file 1099 NECs or 1099 miscellaneous forms like they would have if they were contracting directly with a U.S. citizen. So that's one. There's really no annual reporting, no payroll reporting, no 1099 reporting, and the 1099 reporting is only becoming more burdensome with a lot of state requirements and state withholding requirements, and so it's nice to not have that.
There are many opportunities here in Israel, both for new resources and if your employee is leaving and you're kind of feeling a little bit down that you're going to be losing out on that opportunity, don't give up. There's plenty of opportunities. There's plenty of resources available, and there's plenty of ways to make it happen for you, which will be cost effective for you and maybe not risk free, but a very limited risk. And I think it's a great idea and a great opportunity. Please take advantage of it whenever you can.
That's great. Thank you.